And without wasting time, let's just get into the conversation. So we are talking about the in-demand health tech careers for healthcare professionals. Very interesting topic, very wide topic. So I'll just try as much as possible to do justice to it. So this is the outline of the presentation, a little bit about me, what is health tech, current states, in-demand healthcare, then Q&A session as expected. So she's talked a little bit about me. Like I said, I have a master's in health informatics from Swansea, the clinical anatomy, and my first degree in medicine from Madonna University, though it's not here. So over the course of my career, I've worked in clinical care, operational management, quality improvement, business analysis, project management, and digital transformation. Okay, so a little bit of question, what is health tech? So basically, it just refers to the application of technology and innovation to improve and optimize healthcare delivery. And as a lot of us might be aware, it involves the use of things like electronic health records or electronic medical records, things like telemedicine platforms, things like using wearable health devices, things like mobile health applications, things like AI-powered diagnostic tools these days, especially in areas like radiology. So all this cut across as things happening in healthcare technology. And ultimately, the aim is just to increase access to care for people, improve patient outcomes generally, and ultimately reduce healthcare costs for people who are trying to get, healthcare services. So this is one of the questions I get all the time. So why health tech? Well, health tech is not for everybody, or it might not be for everybody. So again, it depends on your interest. It depends on what you're looking for, really. But some of the good things about it is, number one, it offers growth and innovation. So if you're in the healthcare space or health tech space, rather, you have the opportunities to grow and innovate just the way you could have done if you were in core clinical practice. You have the opportunity to make a difference, especially on a large scale, because you're working on big projects, you're working on things that millions of people will be using at the same time. Is interdisciplinary. When you look at clinical care, you work with consultants, you work with nurses, you other members of the healthcare team. It's the same thing here. You're working with different people, project managers, business analysts, testing, sales, marketing, business development. So again, it's interdisciplinary. It's in high demand, actually. So everybody is moving towards tech. So there's a big demand for, people who can work in these areas. Offers good salary. Yep, it's flexible. You have the opportunity to either work remotely or do hybrid or on-site full-time, depending on what it is. Offers opportunities for career advancement. Like I'll still talk about this down during the presentation. You get in touch with cutting-edge technology. So depending on what area you are in, you get to see latest innovations, what are the newest things in the market. Some people get the opportunity to test those things before other people get across to them. Ultimately, improving healthcare, you get to collaborate with people, and it's very exciting and at the same time challenging work. So the current state of health tech, now we're looking at things like it's an ever revolving or quick changing, landscape. Now we're hearing things like remote healthcare, we're hearing things like telemedicine, we are hearing things like extended reality, where people are looking at using augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality for, clinical training, treatment of patients. Now we're talking about AI and machine learning in the advent of big data, trying to make sense of the data and how that can improve outcomes for people and all of that. So that's at a high level what's happening at the moment. Then lastly, talk about personalized medicine and genomics. So you might just probably want to check that out. So this map here just trying to give a sense of what's happening across, the health tech space. Though this might not be, detailed or cover everything, but it gives you a snapshot of what's happening. So the patient is always at the center of everything we are doing. So you can see the whole different activities happening around the patient. So there is digital therapeutics, there is consumer wearables, you are talking about connected sensors, there are people talking about smartphone cameras, especially for dermatology and all of that. Talk about telemedicine, personal health records, email messages, discharge management applications, and customized consumer mobile applications for different healthcare issues. So that tells you there is a lot going on in the health tech space. And again, this does not cover every single thing that is happening in that space, just to give you an idea of what's happening. So just again, this list is not exhaustive, but it's just to give you a sense of the different roles and opportunities that exist for people who are looking for alternative careers in the health tech space. So the first one is a health informatics specialist. So I just give you the job description, tell you basically the skills and qualification needed, where they are in demand, and possibilities of career progression. So the first one here is the health informatics specialist. So at the high level, what they basically do is, if you're working in this space, you help develop and manage health information systems, ultimately to improve healthcare delivery. So again, there are so many aspects of health informatics. Sorry, Doc? I can't hear you, sorry.
Yeah, are you aware your camera is off?
Yes. I'm just trying, I'll put it on, don't worry. I'm just switching.
All right.
Don't worry. So health informatics is a very broad area. I'll just mention a bit about some of the areas, really. So in terms of qualifications and skill, you have to, a degree in health informatics is very helpful, or in any IT related field is very, very helpful. If you have a knowledge of EMR, EHR systems, usually very helpful, and a bit of data analysis too, it helps. But again, these are not cast in stone, because I myself, I don't do much of data analysis, but I'm in that space. Then in terms of soft skills, you need to have very strong analytical and problem solving skills, really. In terms of global demand, we're looking at the USA, you're looking at the UK, Australia, Canada. These are areas where they are sort of ahead in the game in terms of, EMR deployment and all of that. And in terms of career progression, I get this a lot. What can we do if I decide to get into this space? So you typically you look at roles like the senior health informatics specialist. You can become a manager of health informatics. You can become a director of, health IT or health informatics, wherever you find yourself. Yep. So that's for, sorry, let me just.
I become something when all these things happen.
So, this is just to show you a little bit of the breakdown of the different areas of health informatics.
Because a lot of you
back somewhere. Okay. So if you look at health informatics, so we have clinical informatics, you have education and training, you have those who are doing health records and training administration, you have those who are purely looking at maintaining and developing IT infrastructure, you have those who are doing information management, you have those who are doing library knowledge and information services, then you have those who are doing project and program management. So this gives you a broad overview of the different specializations within health informatics itself. So that's why I say it's really very broad, and Again, it depends on your interests, really. So these are areas somebody might want to consider if you're getting to health informatics. Now, the next one is the clinical data analyst. The data analysts are actually in demand, like high demand, really. And what do? They basically analyze clinical data, and from the analysis, they generate insights, they generate trends that help improve patient outcomes. And sometimes it could be related to improving operational efficiency of whatever organization they are working in. In terms of qualifications and skills, a degree in health informatics makes sense. If you're good in statistics, it makes sense. Then you have to really be very good in data analysis tools, really. Things like R, things like SQL, things like Python, very, very, very important. In terms of some of the soft skills, attention to detail and critical thinking, again, like the first one, is very important. And it's globally in demand. So you can get remote jobs, you can get fully on-site jobs, depending, you can get hybrid role. I know colleagues who are working fully remote, doing data analysis job and all of that. So in terms of career progression, you can become a senior data analyst, where you sort of, manage other junior data analysts. You can move to becoming a data scientist if you want. You can move to becoming a chief data officer. So chief data officer is like senior management role that basically oversees everything that happens about data in the organization. So that's the clinical data analyst. So again, there are different variations of this. So you could hear things like information analyst. So it's basically the same thing, really. It's just, switching the words basically, for all I understand. Then number 3 is the telehealth specialist. Basically, they manage and optimize telehealth programs for remote patient care. Now, in UK, other countries like first world countries, a lot of people are beginning to invest money in remote patient care. So, I mean, there are conditions we think we can manage remotely that you don't need to come into the hospital. So people are leading those projects. You need doctors, you need nurses or specialists to sort of run this type of things, really. So in terms of qualification and skill, having a background in nursing, health, or any medical related field is a good, way to get started. If you have experience with telehealth platforms, that usually helps, and patient engagement strategies. So this is, most I just tell people there are a lot of telemedicine platforms these days. Even if it's to volunteer, just get with these people, start working with them. I think there are things like Mobi Health and the rest of them. I can't remember off the top of my head. So to understand how these things go, because when you get into that space, then that information becomes very invaluable. Then in terms of soft skills, you have to have very good, strong communication skills, organizational skills are usually very good, and time management skills too, usually good. Again, in terms of global demand, find USA, Canada, Germany, Australia, they're looking for people in those areas. Then for career progression, become a coordinator, you could become a manager, then you could become a director of telehealth services. So these are some of the opportunities that exist in that space. And the next one is project manager. So ignore the health IT project manager, just put it project manager in the health tech space. The project managers, I'll probably say they are the most in-demand guys at the moment, because there are lots of IT projects, health IT projects happening in different places at different times. So it's either you're deploying a new system, it's either you're upgrading a new system, it's either you're trying to improve the process or something. Somebody has to manage that process. So they basically lead projects to implement health IT solutions and systems for whoever that is looking for that solution. Again, a degree in health informatics or any IT related field is good. You need to have a project management certification. So it could be a PMP, or it could be a Prince 2, it could be Agile. I mean, there are different certifications depending on where you are, or a certification is usually very, very handy. Then in terms of soft skills, your leadership skills is very, very key because you're going to be leading people, you're delegating activities, you're monitoring, you're coordinating. So that's very important. Your communication skills has to be top notch. Your organizational skills has to be top notch because you're tracking a lot of things at the same time. Then in terms of demand, yeah, globally, they're high demand. USA, UK, UAE, Singapore, Japan. So in terms of career progression, you can move from a senior project or a normal IT project manager, you move to a senior project manager, you can become a program manager, you can become a director of IT. But as you move, there are different extra certifications you probably need to have before you get into those senior roles. So that's for project management. I'll probably say this is the most in demand from what I see at the moment. Now, this is digital health strategies. You help people to develop strategies to integrate digital health technologies into healthcare organizations. So when we talk about digital transformation, these guys, the digital health strategy people, they are usually very, very helpful because
Thanks so much for
are looking at how to the organization is functioning. They're looking at what are the processes and how best can we plug this into the organization. So typically those who have maybe an MBA or Masters in Healthcare Administration are usually very good for these roles. They need a very good knowledge of what is happening in the digital health space, what are the regulations happening in those spaces, I mean, you just have to be updated in all those things. Then in terms of soft skills, your planning skills, your stakeholder management skills are very important because when you talk about transformation projects, most times you're dealing with key stakeholders in different organizations. So you need to be able to manage those people properly. You could become a digital health consultant, you could become a director, you could become a chief digital officer. Again, these are senior roles and you need to, improve yourself or build yourself with certifications to get to those areas or a chief digital officer. Then we'll quickly look at the clinical applications specialist. So these ones, they support healthcare staff in using clinical software applications effectively. So again, when we looking at what I'm doing at the moment. So normally if you're deploying a system, they split it in different modules anyway. Theaters, outpatients, inpatients, and all of that. So there's usually a clinical application specialist who sort of leads that work stream. So it's your job to sort of make sure the application is working the way it should work according to their processes and support the users effectively on how best to use the solution and make the best out of it. So again, a healthcare degree, to have. Again, as a healthcare professional, irrespective of what, maybe a pharmacist or whatever, you already have that healthcare background. So that's a plus for you. If you have a health informatics degree, well, that's an additional plus for you. Then a lot of them will want you to have some expertise in some EPR systems like Epic and Cerner. They are like the global icons when we talk about EPR systems and all of that. But the good thing is they will usually train you on how to use these solutions before you now start supporting users and all of that. So you need to have very good training, very good communication skill, very good troubleshooting skills, because that's typically what you'll be doing on a day-to-day basis as a clinical applications specialist. So in terms of progression, you could become a senior application specialist where you manage a team of junior application specialists. You can become a clinical informatics manager. You can become a director of clinical systems. So those are some of the opportunities that exist for people who are doing clinical application specialists. Then the next one is bioinformatics. So bioinformatics, these are people who basically, look at analyzing biological data for medical research and, diagnostic purposes. So this one's you need a lot of programming, knowledge or background or skill. You need a lot of knowledge in things around genomics and molecular biology, because all you're doing is analyzing biological data, all those DNA, RNA stuff and all of that, just to make sense of it and supporting research. So again, you need strong background in computing, which is very important. A degree in bioinformatics or a master's is usually very helpful. You can become an analyst, you can become a senior scientist, or you could also become a director of bioinformatics. So that's just to make that there. Then the researcher here, AI researcher. Now we're talking a lot about AI and machine learning these days. So the AI researcher, basically, they look to develop and apply AI algorithms for healthcare applications. So you typically need a PhD in computer science, biomedical engineering, but more importantly, you need to have very good knowledge and expertise in machine learning and natural language processing, because you're building algorithms, you're testing algorithms every day, really. So, and these ones are in high demand, especially when you look at roles in Google and all those big four like that. So they're looking for them. So you could become an AI scientist, you can become a senior AI researcher, or even become a chief AI officer. So there are roles like that that exist.
So it's okay.
Then number 9 is the data privacy officer. This is very important for most health tech projects. There's always a privacy, confidentiality, regulatory aspect of every project. So, and this is where these guys come in. So, as a health data privacy officer, your job is to ensure compliance with every data privacy regulation and policy where you are. So, for example, in the UK, you'll be talking about things like the GDPR, things like the EPA. In US, you'll be talking about things like the you have to have good knowledge of what regulations exist in whatever country you're working in, and make sure your company or your project adheres to all those things. So you typically need a healthcare compliance background. Well, you can also do courses in, all this GDPR, HIPAA, and all of that, just to get yourself up to speed. And in terms of soft skills, some of the soft skills you need is the communication and risk management skills. So risk management is very important because you're constantly looking at risk and how do we mitigate those risks in whatever project or wherever you're working. So in terms of career progression, you become a data privacy specialist, you can become a privacy officer or chief privacy officer. So some of these ones also sort of work closely with the information governance guys. So there's a thin line between this and information governance, sort of, but they sort of work together anyway. Now we'll talk about the software engineers. So these ones, even though they work in the background, they are also important and in demand too. So they basically design and develop software for medical devices and equipment. So a degree in software engineering or biomedical engineering is very important. Knowledge with FDA regulation, very good programming skills, because there is no how you can be building softwares without very good programming skills. And now I know a lot of healthcare professionals who have actually moved into these areas and they're actually doing very well. Then you can become a senior software engineer, you can become an engineering manager, as some of the career opportunities that exist or career progression steps for you in that area. And digital therapeutics. So I think this appeared in that map I displayed earlier on. So basically, they create software-based interventions to treat a lot of medical conditions. So by virtue of having a background in healthcare, that sort of helps you. Then knowledge of clinical trials and different regulatory requirements is very important. Then if you're going to be creating software, then you need programming skills or knowledge, really. And these are some of the progression opportunities. You could become a specialist, you could become a product manager, you could become a chief digital therapeutics officer, depending on where you are. I mentioned virtual reality. So some people actually work in the VR space to develop applications for training, for therapy, for patient care. Again, you need to know a lot about, what VR does, how it works. You have to be good with programming, and importantly, things around user experience, user interface design are usually very, very important when you're doing VR development. So you could become a senior VR developer, you can become a VR product manager or senior VP of virtual reality, depending on where you're working. So, but that's a thing, and it's also in demand. Data scientists, close to the data analysts. So they also analyze healthcare data, basically. So typically, I would say data analysis, yeah, is like under data scientists. So the scientists, they are looking at a higher level, things around building models, of data and all of that. So again, you need to be very proficient in programming and data analysis tools. There are no two ways about that. If you're going to do this, then you have to be very good in some of these tools. So critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, a very good domain, healthcare domain knowledge is very important for you to sort of excel in this role. Looking at some of the data scientists I need, because when you reflect back, your medical background or healthcare background usually comes very invaluable. So you can become a senior data scientist or chief data scientist. So those are some of the possible options for you there. Nowadays, I mentioned earlier about remote monitoring of patients. So again, you need people to implement some of these, softwares or solutions for people who have chronic conditions. So again, having a healthcare background is usually very, very key. Then you need to understand what are some of the tools that are out there that people are using to monitor people or remote monitoring technologies. What are the guidelines that are available? And you need to have a lot of patient education and very good communication skills. And these are some of the important or career progression pathways in that particular role. Then you talk about product manager. So basically, product managers, they manage development and launch of healthcare products. So they see the products from conception up to market, even beyond after it gets into the market. So for every single product or service you see out there, there's a product manager who is working behind the scenes to actually make that possible. And they work very closely with project manager. So sometimes people confuse product manager, project manager, but they are not the same thing, really. They are two different roles, actually. So in terms of skills and qualification, by virtue of having a background in healthcare, that gives you a plus already. Then you probably need to do some additional training or certifications in product management, understanding what is the product life cycle, who and who needs to be on the product team, what are the steps we need to take, and all of that. So there's a lot involved in product management, and some of the key skills you probably need to excel. You have to have very good strategic planning skills. You have to have good market analysis skill. Because again, as a product manager, you're looking at the competition, you're looking at where is the market, how can we push this, who are our competitors, what do we have against us, and all of that. So as a product manager, you need to understand the market very well. Then in terms of progression, these are some of the roles you can do. You can become a senior product manager, you can become a director of product management, you can become a VP of product management. So these are possible roles that you can get to do in product management. Then UX design. So again, for every application, there's a UX designer in the background. When you get to use an app, it's like, oh, I like the way this app feels, it's easy to use and all of that. So that's the UX guy. who has been working hard behind the scenes to make sure you enjoy how to use that. So basically, that's what they do really, to design very intuitive and user-friendly interfaces for healthcare applications and systems. Because like I saw one product recently and it was difficult to navigate the homepage. And I'm like, was there no UX guy who worked with these guys to make it very useful for clinicians to use, you know? So that's what they do. So you know how, in fact, you need to take course or a degree in UX design and things like human computer interaction or HCI. So that's where you begin to understand the principles of designing health care and health tech products, really. So that's really very important. Then you have to very good in using things like Adobe, because you're going to be doing mock-ups all the time. You're going to be drawing sketches. You're going to be, putting up prototypes all the time. So you need to have a good proficiency in design tools. Then in terms of soft skills, very good understanding of what user research is and how to conduct user research is very important. Then also usability principles. So when we talk about design, there's what we call usability principles. So you have to have a good knowledge of usability principles, because that sort of guides how you build products or design products that people are going to be using at the end of the day. So you can become a senior UX designer, you can become a design lead, you can become, VP of UX design or whatever. So these are possible roles that you can also get into, and they are in demand. Then the next one is the healthcare business analyst. So business analysts, they analyze healthcare processes and systems to improve efficiency and outcomes. So for every project, for every activity that is being undertaken in terms of health tech space, you always need a business analyst to look at the processes in the back. What is the current state? How do these people do things in this hospital or in this pharmacy or in this diagnostic center? What are the steps? What are the areas offering that we can potentially improve stuff on? So, and with that, they now progress with the project. So that's what typically at the high level, the business analyst people, do. So you probably need a degree in business administration, which is not very, mandatory anyway, healthcare management or related field. Then for you to excel, you need very strong analytical and problem solving skills, because you're always asking the question, why? If somebody tells you we do this from point A to point B, and you're asking yourself, so why are you guys doing it this way and why not the other way? Because you want to understand the reason. So that analytical skill is very important. Then your problem solving skills, communication skills, critical thinking skills, those also come in handy. Knowledge of healthcare operations and healthcare IT systems is usually very, very invaluable. So the more you know about what happens in healthcare and different systems, it doesn't have to be in detail, that knowledge, but it usually comes in very, very, very handy. And in terms of progression, you can become a senior business analyst where you're managing a team of other analysts. You can become, business analysis manager. You can become VP of business analysis. You can decide to even move into project management or so, because they work together. So those are some of the roles or career progression for the healthcare business analyst. So I would say this is also in high demand. Then some other roles you want to also look at, because at the beginning I said this list is not exhaustive. So it depends on where you are going to. Are you going private or are you going public? So it depends on where you're going. So the demand actually differs. So for example, I work in the NHS, and some of these roles are not in high demand in the NHS. For example, I don't see a lot of product manager roles in the NHS because they are not really building products. Because the private guys, they built the product and they're saying, you guys need to use our solution. So if you're looking for product roles, you'd probably be looking at the private sector to get into the product roles. But if you're looking for project management, you always see both in the private and the public sector. So it depends really. So some other roles you also want to consider is the clinical safety officer. That's there's no healthcare IT project that is going to run successfully without a clinical safety officer, because they are looking at that project from a clinical safety standpoint. What are the issues that could happen? Is this system safe for patients to use and all of that? So the clinical safety officer is very, very, very important. You have the information governance lead. So like when I was talking about the data privacy guys, you also need the IG guys on every single project. They're looking at regulations, they're looking at policies, they're looking at data sharing agreement, they're looking at information sharing agreements. For example, if I purchase an American system and deploying it in Nigeria, some of the questions the IG guy will probably be asking is, where is the data going to be stored or saved? Are you keeping it in the US servers, or do you have a server in Nigeria where that data is hosted? So these are things the IG guys look out for. Then risk management is also a career that is in demand, because there is no project that is not full of risk. So you actually need somebody to sort of manage your risk effectively. We'll talk about change management. So these ones are also in demand. So change management, let me just use an example. If a hospital was moving from paper-based records to electronic system, we've been using paper for the past 25 years, and one day you wake up that everybody is going to start using the software. That's a massive change, and you have to manage that change effectively, or else your project is going to fail. That is where the change management people come in. So they have the expertise, the capabilities of supporting that project so that it can transition effectively. Now, benefits guys, they are also in demand, because for every project we are doing, we have to track the benefits. At the outset of the project, we said, this is what we are going to achieve, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. Somebody needs to be tracking those benefits across the organization. Are we realizing it? What was the baseline? Where are we now? Where are the opportunities for improvement? That is somebody's 9 to 5 job. Then you talk about the clinical information officer, the CIOs. They are also in demand, because if you look at digital transformation, they play a very key role in digital transformation. Chief clinical information officer, chief nursing information officer. For every project we do in the health IT space, we usually need these people as key stakeholders in those meetings to drive those conversations, because without them on the table, your project might likely fail. Then there's the DevOps, those ones, they work in the background. There's the artificial intelligence, machine learning people. There's the digital trainers. Every solution, somebody needs to train doctors and nurses how to use the system. That is where the trainers come in. So you typically be trained. Then after you're trained, then you now go and train other people how to use the system. Then there's the digital adoption specialist. Again, IT project, they sort of support adoption. How well are clinicians or nurses beginning to use the system and all of that. Then cybersecurity, those ones, they are also in demand, again, depending on it's either private or public sector. But again, every day you hear of data breaches, security breaches and all of that. So you always need a very strong cyber guys working at your back end to make sure you're secure. Then quality assurance lead and expert. So for everything we do in the health tech space, there's always an element of quality assurance. How well are we meeting the standards that are set by whatever governing body in where you are? Where are the areas that we could potentially improve? So quality assurance, quality improvement processes. So these ones, they sort of work hand in hand, really. And the last but not the least on this list is the software testing guy. So nobody deploys any new solution without testing that solution. And that's where the testers come in. So they test the product, make sure it works the way they said it's going to work, look at the outcomes, and then advise what next to do. So basically, those are some of the roles that are in demand at the moment. And it's a constantly changing what you call it now, role. So you sort of have to keep monitoring really to see what's moving at every point in time so that you're well informed about issues and how to navigate your career really. So I'll probably stop for now. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ron. It was an amazing presentation. So detailed. A lot of stuff packed in here. So our coordinator for today, Chinoyere Mobudo, Nurse Chinoyere, will now take the question and answers section.
Yeah,
please go ahead.
Okay. Can everyone hear me, please?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ronald, for that explicit and yet simplified section. It was very interesting. I was intrigued, like a lot of things to learn. Okay. So I can see the comments from people. It was such an awesome presentation, awesome value pack section. Thank you very much, sir. So I don't know if anyone have question, you can still raise a signal, but I picked up a few during the course of the presentation. About 2 persons dropped in message in the inbox. The first one asked, Mr. Samuel, he asked, are there no demand for these roles in Africa? Okay. Yeah, and then the second one said, what if you don't have a medical degree, but you have experience in digital science? I believe that's what you meant by DS, Bruno. Can you switch?
Well, I'll probably start with the first one. Whether there is demand in Africa. Well, honestly, yes, there is demand in Africa, but like again, when you look at the digital maturity, when you compare Africa and the rest of the world, there's a huge gap. So that's why I said I focus more on the third world. But again, like in Africa, in Nigeria, there is demand because I also sort of support projects back home. A lot of private hospitals are beginning to move from paper to electronic records. They need people to support them in those processes. They're looking for, I have a colleague who is into, quality improvement. So quality assurance, he's supporting a lot of projects back home. So basically, yes, the market is there, but not as much as, you would expect it to be in the whatever. So like we are still growing anyway. So, I mean, it's just to be ready for the opportunity because we're going to get there finally. And they'll be looking for people who to fill those roles in Nigeria, Africa. So it's just to keep an eye out there. Then you don't have to have a healthcare background to switch into some of these roles. Again, it depends on the role. There are some of them that if you have a healthcare background, then it makes a lot of difference for you, really. So you probably will not need to, you wouldn't struggle. Like when I look at what I do in some places, some people struggle with discussing with doctors and nurses because that barrier is there. There's some things the doctor is trying to explain that the technical guy will never understand because he doesn't understand what is patient care and processes and all of that. So for some of those roles, having a background in healthcare helps you, but it's not an absolute requirement, really. So it doesn't stop you from switching, really. So you could potentially look at roles where you probably don't need to have conversations with, what do you call it now, maybe doctors or healthcare people. Maybe you're more on the technical side, you're working in the background, doing all the configuration, setup, and all of that. So they just tell you what they need to happen and you just make it happen. So it's not your business what they are discussing and all of that. So I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, sir. I think I'm still seeing more questions from the inbox. Okay, so someone asked, Dr. Nero, hello, thanks for the presentation. You mentioned a lot of careers, and I noticed that under job qualifications, you always highlighted the degrees required. And I noticed that only a few has medicine. For clarity's sake, would medical professionals without BSc in computer science that have informally gained these skills be able to explore these careers?
Yes, the answer to that question is yes. So using myself as an example, right? I went for a postgraduate degree in health informatics. And one of the requirements when they are asking, when you're filling the admission form, or the requirements is either you have healthcare background, it's either you have a computing background, or it's either you have maybe an engineering background. Those are the three backgrounds. So me coming from a healthcare perspective, initially I was worried maybe there's a lot of coding or technical things we are going to be doing in this program. But when we got into the program, it was a different ball game entirely. So that's why I talked about different areas, even within the health informatics. So like myself now, I've settled under project management, business analysis side of things. I'm not concerned with what happens at the technical level and all of that. That's not my business. That's not where my area of interest lies. So I'm looking at, oh yes, we have this new solution, we want to implement it. Can you come and help us support that process? That is where me I'm coming from, right? That is where my interest lies. So you don't need to have a BSc in computer science to actually, be useful or be able to work in some of these roles, really. So, but again, just a caveat here, it doesn't mean that you don't have to learn additional stuff, So I had to start learning things around project management, things around business analysis, start understanding the terminologies. YouTube was really helpful. So then you have to also do some certifications. So it's not just because, oh, okay, I'm a doctor, you just jump into those areas. So there's a bit of learning involved. But it doesn't mean that because I don't have a BSc in computer science, I can't work in these areas. No, that's not the case.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarity. One more from the inverse. Someone said, Dr. Vikan, I'm just wondering by now what health tech specialization would be best for those medical doctors living in Africa and for Africa. Did you get that?
So in terms of specialization, this one is a bit tricky because again, I tend to look at what interests me really and what the trends are looking like. So it's not like tomorrow now say go and specialize in this one because that's what is trending. Then it doesn't become relevant and all of that. So again, you have to closely look at your interests. So like myself now, even though yes, I know a little bit about data analysis and all of that, that is not my area. So nothing is going to ever make me to say I'm going to specialize maybe in data and problem, all of that. So you're looking at your interests. I'm looking at more like for myself, management type of thing. So that's where I'm looking at. Then, like some of the roles. So the way I see these things, I look at the entire value chain in whatever we are doing. So let's say, for example, now we are implementing a project, or let's say we're even building a product now, right? In that project itself, we're going to need technical people to sort of build that project, right? So we're looking for people in technical background. I'm going to need a product manager to manage the product lifecycle of that project. I'm going to need a business analyst to find what are the requirements, what are the functional requirements, what are the system requirements, what are the operational requirements of this product. The business analyst has to be there. I need to have a project manager to manage that project from end to end, from when we start, from when to when we finish. Then even after we finish building the product. Somebody has to sell this product for me. That is where the sales and marketing people come into the picture. Now, even within the sales and marketing, some people are going to, do the comms, do the writing articles to make sure the public understands what it is we are selling. So that is where the clinical content people come in, the medical writing, the technical writers come in. They have a role to play in that. By the time you finish selling the product, an organization buys your product at the end of the day, we're now looking for who are the people who are going to train our users to use this product. That is where the trainers come into the picture. Who are the people going to support this organization to adopt this product? That's where the adoption specialists come in, right? Then at the bottom of that, too, you have the change management experts. Yes, we're introducing a new change in this organization. Who can support this change process? You start looking for the change people, you start looking for the risk people to come into the picture. So at every point in time, like I usually look at the whole end-to-end chain, not looking like, okay, maybe it's just this area we should be focusing in all the time. No, you look at the whole value chain. Everybody has a role to play in that value chain. You pick an area, hone your skills, say, yes, this is where I'm sitting down. But that does not mean you won't keep updating yourself with the trends, things that are happening. Like now everybody's singing AI, natural language processing, Gemini, ChatGPT, and all of that. Fine. So even as a project manager, I'll still go and do small courses here and there just to give me a sense of what is happening in that space. But that does not mean I'm now going to leave my work in project management and just jump into the AI space and all of that. So that's how I usually look at this thing. So there is work for everybody in whatever area you think you want to, specialize, really. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you very
All
much.
right.
There is one more question. It just came in now. Okay, so it says, thank you for the presentation. However, any suggestion on where to leverage these skills outside from hospital, as we are in Africa, as we in Africa don't have as much health tech for product institute startups. Also, how do we market ourselves to international health tech companies? Okay.
I'll probably want to disagree that we don't have as much health tech products really in Africa. There is a lot of startups everywhere. Because I know I've worked with plenty as on a freelance basis. I worked with Wellbees, I worked with Doctora, there's Genesis, there's a lot of them out there. Everybody is trying to solve one problem or the other. So you could only say probably they're not as well known as maybe the big players in the market, but there are actually a lot of startups out there in Africa, in Nigeria, who are doing one thing or the other. So it's just you probably need to do a little bit of digging and research to find out where they are, then potentially sort of work with them. Like I usually say, if you're starting out, you probably want to volunteer or do internships or work for free for them. That's what I did, for a greater part of when I was still like in active clinical practice. I was just basically doing this by the side, volunteering for them, supporting them, understanding what it is they are doing, whatever they are building, and all of that. So that's usually the best way I would say to approach that. So by the time you supported 1-2 companies, then you start understanding how the system works before you can now start talking about working for maybe international health tech companies. Because the truth is at a global level, they will be expecting some level of skills and expertise from you. And I mean, you can't just jump into that area unless maybe you have very strong qualifications or whatever. But for we who are just healthcare professionals, it's just good to just volunteer from scratch, start working either in product or project support officer or writing. Just find something and start doing and sort of put your heads down, because when I look at what I've done over the years, now everything begins to add up, because then you look at what are you even doing then? but now everything is beginning to make sense because you get to learn a lot from those startups, really. So I think that's probably the best way I would advise for you to, leverage those skills. Then some of the skills too. Well, anyway, we're talking about health tech. You can actually use some of these skills in other industries, finance, like a business analyst can work in any space, a project manager can work in any space, really. So some of them can actually be applied outside the healthcare, but within the health tech, there's a lot to be done depending on whatever your skill set is, really. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Ron. Nurse Chino Yerem, thank you so much. It's been an amazing section. And I would like to say this with respect to the last question that was asked. With respect to the last question that was asked, Medics in Tech is actually trying to link up healthcare professionals with these skills with tech companies, especially startups in Africa, to see how emerging people who are coming up with these skills can actually try to volunteer, as you say, work with them, sort of pitching healthcare professionals with some of these companies, either at the level of internship or whatever, so that we can actually gain those experience that we actually build our portfolio to better things to come. So Medics in Tech is thinking of that, and it's something that we're actually going to do before, let's say, before September. So it's one part of Medics in Tech that's actually going to be established. I know of one organization that is Adopt a Doc. You mentioned that, yeah, something like that, a framework like that, whereby healthcare professionals with tech interests can actually be, brought close together with some of these startups and some of these companies to see how they can learn from them, will I say volunteer for them, and actually build their skills with them. And that's why Medics in Tech is just for startups and tech experts as well as for healthcare professionals, so that we can cross-fertilize ourselves and be growing in this. So one other thing I want us to, what Ron actually said, there are a lot of startups, there are a lot of healthcare, health tech startups right here in Africa. There are so many of them. And they can come to you when they look at your LinkedIn profile and it doesn't suggest anything tech, or it doesn't suggest anything of the sort which they are looking for. So one of the ways is also to start building your portfolio so that when they are looking for people, they don't come announcing it. They look at your LinkedIn profile, and if it matches what they are looking out for, they contact you. So that's how it works. And we are so grateful for Dr. Kelechi Ronald. I want to say something before we all go now. Dr. Kelechi Ronald is so packed with information when it comes to alternative healthcare careers. And I want to use this opportunity to share his LinkedIn profile so that we'll follow him. It's very, very vital. I'm also going to show us his YouTube page. So I'm going to share my screen. It's going to be a short one. So can we all see my screen? I want a confirmation we can see my screen.
I don't see the screen yet.
Not yet, sir.
Oh, I'm not sharing yet.
I've stopped sharing.
No.
I've stopped sharing, so we can see it now.
We can see it now.
All right. Okay. So this YouTube channel is a YouTube channel by Dr. Ron, the one who just spoke to us. So you can see 339 videos. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
No.
These 339 videos are in this area of alternative healthcare career. So, I mean, you've got everything you need when you're talking of, okay, look at just this latest video 2 days ago. It says alternative career path for a UK GP. That's him. Okay, that's a doctor's journey into business change management. My first attempt at content creation. Hello? So There is so much you can get by just subscribing to this YouTube channel. So I'm going to paste the link to this YouTube channel right now on the chat, and I'm also going to send it to our WhatsApp channel. Just subscribe to it. You will get so much. I mean, there is so much in this YouTube channel as well as his podcast. Okay, just check out his podcast. This is the 110th podcast, 14 alternative career paths for UK trained from clinician to business change manager. So if you're just looking at how does this work, how is it going to work? Sorry, I'm going to stop sharing actually, so that I can see our faces. Oh, stop sharing. Good. So if you are looking for more details, our topic for this month has been alternative career paths. So we are now putting it together. If you want to have more information in this area, if you are really interested, go and subscribe to that YouTube channel and follow him on LinkedIn. He talks so much about it. I mean, he tried to condense so much in 60 minutes. I saw him struggling to bring out these things. That's just the truth. That's just the truth, because the information is so much. He has interviewed a lot of people who made this change, either in part-time form or who took the deep dive. So no matter, even if you're looking at doing it part-time or full-time, just follow him. He has what it takes to direct you. That doesn't mean we are not going to be talking about it in our committee. We're going to be discussing it. But if you really are interested in changing careers or having a side hustle, this YouTube channel is a must for you to subscribe. And this is his LinkedIn profile. I'm grabbing it. Make sure you follow him on LinkedIn. So I found out about this a long time ago, and the guys never failed to watch any video you post. Oh, who am I sending it to? Sorry, I'm sending it now to the chat. So I don't know whether you have seen that. It's on the chat now. Yeah, it's very important before we go. I'm going to send it on the WhatsApp channel. So if you're not in our WhatsApp group, let me give the link for the WhatsApp so that you join there, because we'll probably share it over there. So who has the WhatsApp link? Maybe you can just share it with everyone. And one final thing, I don't know whether our photographer is here, our cloud architect. Dr. Samba, are you here? Oh, Dr. Samba is not here. I can't see Dr. Samba. So, Dr. Ron, we are so glad you made it, and we are so glad you actually shared with us all these things. And I tell you guys, more value will be, gotten if you follow him on LinkedIn and if you subscribe to that YouTube channel. It's very, very important. And Dr. Samba is not here now. He's not here now. I think he got disconnected. Our next section is going to be next Sunday. It's going to be a sort of a roundtable with some innovators in the health tech space. We are going to bring on board some health tech innovators who are also medics, and they are going to sit down and answer your questions. So you don't want to miss that particular section. It's the final section for this. And who knows what's going to come next? But this final section is very, very important. And I want everyone to show up in this next session, as we're going to interact face to face with some of these innovators, know what spurred them into it, how they did it, and the advice they have for us. It's very, very important. So before we now finally close, we have a ritual. Everyone will turn on his or her own camera so that we can see our faces, and then we take pictures because we need to document our journey. That was one of the first things Dr. Samba taught us, documenting your journey. It's very, very important. So you can actually use to build a case when you are negotiating with people, either for business or in healthcare or whatever. So please turn on your camera so that we can actually allow Dr. Ron to go and rest. Unless we have another question for him, but I believe that if you follow him on LinkedIn, follow his YouTube channel, we'll get every answer we are looking for when it comes to alternative health careers. So please, I do go Purity. Yeah, turn on. So I'm going to take the first page. Okay, done. I'm moving to the second page. Wow, there are no faces on the second page. There are actually no faces. I'll go ahead and take it that way because we don't have much time again. But that's a whole lot of people. Thank you guys for coming, and I believe we are going to show up.
Adugo has a question. I can see Adugo's hand up.
Yeah, I see a hand up. All right, please, Adugo, Purity, please ask your question before we actually exit. Adugo, Purity has a question. Can you ask that question? Adugo, Purity. Yeah, I'm not getting any response from her. But her hand is up. So guys, that is it. So thank you, Dr. Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chimonyere Mobutu. We see everyone again come Sunday, same time. So bye-bye, everyone.
All right. Cheers. Bye.
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 Bye.